All right. Bungie has just dropped a massive news article on us here. I think we're going to see the nerf to, well, warlocks. We're going to see a nerf to Strand Titans, potentially. They're going through all of the ability tuning preview for the final shape. Let's go ahead and dive into this. This is going to be pretty spicy, I think. Dev Insights, the final shape ability tuning preview. Hey folks, Combat Gameplay Team here for a rundown of ability changes coming with the launch of the final shape in just a few short weeks. As a warning, this is one of our largest balance patches in recent years, so you may want to settle in for a long read. Here's a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. All right, so here we go. Updates to a large portion of the Stasis ability suite. I say that wrong every time, including our new keyword Frost Armor. All right, so we got the introduction of Frost Armor. They've been talking about this for a little bit. The near future of Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn in the final shape. Well, those changes. A subclass by subclass breakdown of balance changes to abilities, aspects, and fragments, including but not limited to those included with Prismatic. All right, Stasis subclasses. Let's see what we got here. Shortly after the release of Stasis, we shifted focus to back-to-back launch of the Bungie 30th Anniversary Pack and Void 3.0, and we haven't let up on the gas since. As a result, other than some smaller changes we've been able to make here and there, it's been difficult to evaluate the relationship between Stasis and our other damage types and make larger feature-level updates to it. This was something we wanted to change in the final shape, and particularly wanted to upgrade the Stasis Shard Overshield that lived on the fringes of the damage type to make it a full-on keyword that we could incorporate into abilities, armor, or weapon perks. This is awesome. This will add a ton of survivability to using these Stasis builds. I think this could be pretty good. Frost Armor is a stacking buff that reduces incoming damage. So we got damage resistance. This will be comparable to like Woven Mail, with greater damage reduction as your stacks increase. At launch, Frost Armor will be granted from a variety of sources, including the Tectonic / Grim Harvest, Glacial Harvest aspects, fragments, and exotic armor. By default, you can build to a maximum number of 5 stacks of Frost Armor that lasts 9 seconds, but with the newly reworked Whisper of Rhyme fragment, Frost Armor's maximum lifetime increases to 13 seconds and can build to a maximum of 8 seconds. Unlike the Stasis Shard Overshield, Frost Armor remains active when your super is cast, though its effectiveness is slightly lower while your super is active. Very interesting. So you'll be able to have, it's going to be an absolute tank while in your super. That's going to be pretty cool to see. And we'll get to see some really unique builds using Frost Armor. We got a new Frost Armor keyword. You are fortified by layers of durable stasis matter, reducing incoming damage. Frost Armor damage resistance now grows stronger as you gain additional stacks. Reduce damage from PvE combatants by 4.5% per stack, and from enemy players by 2% per stack. Interesting. So it's 4.5 per stack. Right now, we're sitting at Woven Mail as a 45% damage reduction, and this builds to a maximum of 8 stacks here. So quick maths, we got 8 times 4 is 32 and 34%. Wait, no, 36% roughly. I think that math is right. So a 36% damage resistance at maximum. So not quite as strong as Woven Mail at max stacks. Let me know if my math is right down in the comments below. Then we got Whisper of Rhyme, we reworked. No longer grants a Stasis Shard Overshield when collecting a Stasis Shard. Now increases the maximum duration and stat count of your Frost Armor. Got it. So it sounds like it could have, even though it may not have as much damage resistance, it could have really high uptime, and Bungie might end up nerfing Woven Mail here again, because they're going to go through their Strand updates here in just a moment. As we saw highlighted at the top here, Strand's going to get touched up. We'll see. One long-standing piece of feedback we've received is that Stasis Shards felt too limited, requiring a specific aspect to generate. Because Stasis Shards are created for all allied players at once, rather than being a shared consumable resource like Tangles, or local-only resource like Fire Sprites, Ionic Traces, or Void Breaches, it would be easy for the number of Stasis Shards on the field to spiral out of control if we were to make their creation intrinsic to the damage type. Instead, we're increasing the number of sources that players can build into to generate them. More on this shortly, and increasing their value when collected with a harvest aspect equipped. Got it. When Tectonic, Grim, or Glacial Harvest is equipped, in addition to their previous behavior, collecting any Stasis shard now grants a small amount of health and a stack of Frost armor. Alongside this increased potency, we're also implementing a shared cooldown on rapid Stasis shard creation. This cooldown is intended to be pretty generous and primarily limits cases of oppressive behavior like triple behemoth trial squads. That's funny. So we got all harvest aspects. Added new behavior. While Grim, Tectonic, or Glacial Harvest is equipped, Stasis shards grant a small amount of health and a stack of Frost armor. Large Stasis shards from Grim Harvest grant more health and Frost armor stacks. All harvest aspects now have a standardized cooldown when a large number of shards are created very quickly. And Tectonic Harvest now creates a Stasis shard when shattering a frozen target, in addition to shattering Stasis crystals. Our intention is that Frost Armor can be granted through a variety of sources. As part of this, we've updated Renewal Grasp and Ballador's Wrathweavers to directly grant Frost Armor nice, rather than their own custom damage resistance or Stasis Shard Overshield. Okay. Renewal Grasp replaces generic damage resistance with Frost Armor. On entering your own Dustfield volume, you or your allies gain a stack of Frost Armor about every 0.9 seconds. While in the volume, an additional Frost Armor stack is granted, resetting your timer. Got it. Ballador's Wrathweavers, we got replace Stasis Shard Overshield with Frost Armor when you activate your Rift or use your Winter's Wrath Shatter attack. Very nice. I don't know how good the Renewal Grasp damage resistance was before this, but I know it was really strong. So hopefully that's not like an effective nerf to Renewal Grasp, but either way, I guess it makes it play into the new stuff that they're trying to do, the new build. So we got to help players increase capabilities to generate Stasis shards. We've created a brand new fragment that offers a straightforward method that can slot into many different build types. Whisper of Chill. All right, Stasis Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create a Stasis shard. Nice. As a part of this effort, we've reworked Whisper of Chains. This fragment has been a popular choice since its inception due to ease of use and stat bonus. However, its gameplay benefit was frequently difficult to read and ran counter to core gameplay loops revolving around creating and destroying crystals, and the core human compulsion to destroy every crystal you see. To make Whisper of Chains fully successful, it required cooperation from teammates in a way that sometimes took success out of the user's hands. This resulted in situations where, by shattering a Stasis crystal for damage, players could unknowingly reduce their or their teammates' combat effectiveness. This introduced negative social friction that we wanted to remove outright. We've pivoted Whisper of Chains, instead focus on chaining creation of Stasis shards and Frost Armor when paired with the Harvest aspect. Whisper of Chains no longer grants passive damage resistance when near a Stasis crystal frozen target. Dang, that was going to be really exciting too. You could imagine if you could stack Frost Armor and Whisper of Chains. You'd be standing next to a crystal, you'd have your crazy overshield, have heals for days. Now grants a chance to create a Stasis shard when defeating a target while you have one or more stacks of Frost Armor. And then we got, next on our list of Frost Armor fragment reworks is Whisper of Fractures. With Stasis shards granting melee energy as a base behavior, relying on a difficult to read passive melee energy regeneration bonus felt like a place we could reduce overlap and build in support for the new keyword, Whisper of Fractures. No longer increases melee energy regeneration while surrounded by enemies. Now grants a stack of Frost Armor when you shatter any frozen target with a melee attack. Got it. Our final fragment rework is Whisper of Torment. This fragment is a sleeper pick that does its job well, but its actual output has too many variables to keep track of and required the player to be at critical health for its largest bonus, and we're simplifying things a bit. The Torment now has grenade energy. Gains are no longer dependent on your current health value. Base grenade energy regeneration amount per incoming damage event increased from 5 to 7%. While you have Frost Armor, energy per damage event increases from 7 to 12%. Nice. Finally, we've created one more brand new Stasis fragment. Whisper of Reversal is a close combat tool for Frost Armor users, adding chances for additional crowd control if you're willing to take the risk. Okay, I like this already. Reversal, while you have Frost Armor, dealing or receiving a physical melee, not melee projectile, damage slows your victim or attacker. No way. So you get punched and it slows them? That's actually kind of funny. That's going to be crazy in Crucible. Get punched and get slowed. It's going to be crazy. Yeah, it could be pretty interesting. I don't know if it's going to be like OP, obviously. You're not trying to get punched in PvE, or even in PvP for that matter, but it's interesting that you would punch someone and you get slowed. Now let's talk Shatter. Well, I want the focus of Stasis to be primarily in high-value crowd control abilities in the current sandbox. Shattering a frozen target doesn't always result in the payout that the other damage types are able to deliver with their capstone keywords, especially in high difficulty activities. Misjudging your ability to capitalize on a freeze can lead to dire consequences. To help address this, we're bumping base shatter damage versus PvE combatants from 200 to 400. But simultaneously, we're fixing an issue where boss combatants receive double damage from auto shattering, so we don't quadruple the shatter damage. Got it. So Stasis shatter, increase base PV shatter from 200 to 400. Nice. And fix an issue where bosses auto shattering being hit by 2 instances of shatter damage. Fix an issue where players in an active super would show immune damage flyouts. Nice. Increase the shatter damage. That should be good. Okay, that's it for our general Stasis updates. In addition to these changes, we made a number of updates to subclass specific Stasis abilities. Got it. So that's just the general Stasis. Now we need to go into, we got Warlock, Hunter, and then we got Titan. The Behemoth out there. The Behemoths have not, no one's been rocking a Behemoth for a long time now. It'll be interesting to see what they finally do and make it good with all of these changes. We got Warlock. Up front, we believe that Shade Binders are largely in good shape across all game modes. They are good. They're actually a really solid subclass right now. Like, if you're not using a Warlock, you're basically just using this Stasis Warlock. And so, therefore, we've limited our focus here. And we've added a small boost to Ice Flare Bolt's ability to lock down rooms. So, Ice Flare Bolts increase maximum number of Seekers created before going on cooldown from 5 to 7. All right. Small stuff for Warlock. It's already been good, though. Now, Revenant, with Winter Shroud included in the Prismatic Hunter kit, we knew we needed to increase its viability in high difficulty content. We're getting up close and personal, gets much riskier. We also wanted to provide a smoother gameplay loop between Winter Shroud and other Revenant abilities. We've updated Winter Shroud to provide a moderate boost to class ability regeneration when you slow a target from any source, and added a brief window of damage reduction from PvE combatants when activated. That sounds pretty solid, actually. Winter Shroud. Slowing targets briefly increases your class ability. That's excellent for hunters. That's what they want. Just slow the targets, get your class ability back faster. That could be a nice loop with your Gherkins. Bonuses reduced in PvP game modes. Now grants PvE damage reduction when activated. That sounds excellent. Touch of Winter has been widely used by our Stasis Hunter players since its introduction in Season of the Splicer, primarily when paired with Duskfield Grenades for high uptime zone denial, or Glacier Grenades or Shatter Dive combos. Oh god, remember the Shatter Dive meta back in the day? The latter has struggled in PvE content in recent seasons as the sandbox has matured, so we're making a targeted change to increase its PvE potency without returning to an era of the Crucible where you had to fear rounding a corner into a barrage of ice. That was terrible. In addition, Touch of Winter's Cold Snap Grenade upgrade has been widely underused since its inception, so we're implementing a larger rework to its functionality. Got it? Touch of Winter, Glacier Grenade. Add an additional Stasis Crystal to the ring formation, increasing from 6 to 7. Glacier Grenade ring now forms over 0.2 seconds rather than instantly. Cold Snap Grenade no longer changed an additional time while Touch of Winter's equipped. That's actually nice. I felt like that was a bit wild where it would just start chaining and go around freezing everything. Instead, Seekers now duplicate when they freeze a target. Uh-oh. Second and third Seeker chains now create a medium and large Stasis Crystal respectively, rather than every chain creating a small crystal. Alright. Interesting changes there. And then while Silence and Squall are still effective at locking down rooms full of enemies, the super we're talking about here, we've done a small touch up on its ability to roam the battlefield and how quickly it converts from a slow to freeze on PvE combatants. We think this will increase its viability in target-rich environments. Increase Silence and Squall maximum travel speed by 10%. Squall Storm now slows down when any target is within its area of effect to reduce instances where it could overshoot its target. And increase damage and slow tick rate versus PvE combatants by 40%. Got it. Silence the Squall buff for PvE for those Stasis Hunters out there. Can rejoice a little bit with that. Alright, Behemoths. Where are my Titans at? For our Behemoth players, we are making several quality of life improvements. We're making Shiver Strike and Glacial Quake more reliable, improving the ease of use of Diamond Lances to fit into the cadence of combat of the Prismatic Titan, and tweaking Cryoclasm to be more intuitive. Very nice. Alright, so we got Shiver Strike is a melee ability with a higher barrier to entry than most of our roster. And while that is intended at a high level, there are instances where it can be misread. It can misread the player's intention and fail to find the target as a result. To help mitigate this, we're increasing its ability to find and lunge towards targets in its now larger search area and increasing the damage versus PvE targets. These changes also affect the Glacial Quake light attack. In addition, Glacial Quake will now auto sprint when players start moving forward, so no more awkwardly bashing your face into a crystal you weren't meant to shatter. Nice. Or something very cool. Alright, Shiver Strike, increase damage versus PvE combatants by 10%. Increase size of melee target search cone by 50%. And increase maximum lunge tracking angular speed from 7 degrees. Nice. That's good for that behemoth melee. Then we got Glacial Quake now automatically begins sprinting when players throttles forward. We've had a number of iterations of Crowdclasm since its initial release in Beyond Light, with its current version requiring a sprint windup to activate. While this solved the behemoth mobility balance issue at the time, it resulted in a state where it can be easily mistime your slide, and just before Crowdclasm is ready to activate. To address this, we're returning to a middle ground between Crowdclasm's original release and now. We're removing the sprint requirement, but implementing a cooldown after a single extended slide. Crowdclasm removes sprint time requirement. Crowdclasm now goes on cooldown for 4 seconds after one extended slide. And then we're going on to Diamond Lance quality of life changes. Make it easier to pick up on the battlefield. And increasing the size and thrown projectile detonation versus all targets in its slam attack that we got. Increase thrown Diamond Lance detonation radius from 3 to 5 meters. Increase the Diamond Lance slam detonation. Diamond Lance now shatters stasis crystals on direct impact. And its pickup interaction from 0.2 to 0.1. And its interaction radius from 0.7 to 3 meters, so it'll be easier to pick up. It'll pick up faster. Shatters crystals. Nice. Very nice. Seems like some good changes overall for Stasis. I'm looking forward to some of these Stasis builds out there. Now, next up we got Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn. Now, these have always been kind of in tandem in PvE. Either we've used one or we use the other based on the encounter, based on the meta at the time. And we've seen the meta shift back and forth over and over again. Back in November, we've briefly touched on Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn and how we're evaluating their place in the sandbox. With the launch of the final shape, we're making some larger changes to both these supers to push them into more distinct identities and reduce the fire and forget nature of Well of Radiance. Uh-oh, that's not good. That's going to be crazy. Well's core fantasy has always been a supercharged healing empowering rift combo, right? Overcharging a rally point for your fire team during moments of focus. In its current form, its healing and damage resistance offers effective invulnerability, which removes any other defensive option from consideration on top of providing a sizable boost to your fire team's offensive output. I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, that's basically how we're using Wells now. We've chosen to push Well of Radiance further towards that offensive capability by allowing its radiance to persist for a short duration after players leave the well. We're also pulling back on its defensive output, both damage resistance and healing rate, by a significant margin. Oh snap, they're turning the well into a freaking rift. This is going to be crazy here. Well of Radiance now grants Radiant for 8 seconds when players exit the Well of Radiance area. So you pop a well, your teammates go into it, they leave, and they get Radiant for 8 seconds, so they can effectively leave the well and have a boost to their damage with Radiant. Reduced player survivability while standing in the well aura. Reduced healing per second from 100 to 50 health points. Matching restoration times 2. Okay, so it still matches resto times 2, so it's not completely unreasonable. You're probably going to need to stack well with something like damage resistance. Like you're going to want woven mail or maybe frost armor now. You're going to have to kind of synchronize the two of them. This is going to be crazy. Increased heal on cast from 40 to 300 health points. Got it. So immediately when you pop it, you get 300 instead of 40 points. Interesting. Reduced damage resistance versus non-boss combatants from 40% to 20%. Okay, wow, that's a big change right there. And then reduced damage resistance versus boss combatants from 40% to 10%. So bosses are about to absolutely smoke guardians chilling in the well. That's going to be crazy. Note, damage resistance versus enemy players is unchanged. Increased maximum orbs from defeating targets while in your Well of Radiance aura from 4 to 5. That's rough for the well. The well just got fucking obliterated. Ward of Dawn, on the other hand, is meant to be a highly defensible safe haven for you and your team. In practice, our combat encounters don't have a lot of opportunities for this type of gameplay to shine, so we're making a change to allow Ward of Dawn to provide defensive capability while fighting around the dome, not just in it. We're also reworking Armor of Light to make your current health state while in the Dome of Ward of Dawn more understandable. And we're pushing Ward of Dawn away from its current offensive capability unless you specifically build into it. We got Ward of Dawn, Armor of Light, removed Armor of Light Overshield. Ward of Dawn now immediately applies a full Void Overshield to the caster, and allies that enter its dome, so you go into it, you get the Void Overshield. Armor of Light now instead grants additional damage resistance to players inside the Ward of Dawn, 30% versus enemy players and 60% versus enemy players. Got it. Very nice. Effective health of players inside the Ward of Dawn dome remains roughly the same as it was before versus PvE combatants. Effective health of players inside the Ward of Dawn is significantly lower than it was before versus other players in PvP and cannot be further increased by stacking Bastion barricades inside the Ward of Dawn to gain additional Overshield layers. Got it. Allies near the Ward of Dawn dome now have Void Overshield trickled over them, similar to the volume behind a Bastion barricade. Very interesting. So if you're just near the bubble, you get an Overshield now. So I think the play might be to pop a well and pop a bubble, then pop the well and then pop a bubble maybe behind it, so that way you can stand in front of the bubble but still in the well to get the healing properties of the well and the Overshield properties of the bubble, and then you can go to town and basically mitigate all of these changes and still be able to functionally play the way you've been playing. No longer provides weapons of light by default. This behavior has been moved to the benefits of Helm of Saint 14. Very interesting. So if you want to get weapons of light, you'll have to just rock Saint 14. That's a big buff to Saint. And the Ward of Dawn caster can now generate additional orbs of power by defeating enemies with melee attacks in or near their Ward of Dawn dome. Very interesting. Additionally, we've seen that supers above and burst damage supers in the same tier have increasingly dominated the Crucible landscape due to their uptime. While we do want to maintain some texture across a match when supers become available, the delta is currently a bit too high, especially in 3v3 modes. To reduce this a bit, we're making a change to all supers in the final shape. While different types of supers have different passive recharge times, all supers will now use the same damage-based rechargers. This means that no matter what super you have equipped, dealing a specific amount of damage to a specific enemy type will result in the same amount of super energy gained, whereas previously that value could vary by about 30%. This effectively increases the real-world uptime of your roaming supers in the slowest recharge tier and reduces the uptime of your fastest recharging burst supers. All right, now let's dive into each subclass for some more general balance changes. All right, wow, that's a lot to take in already there, though. Some crazy changes. That's going to be a tough nerf for the WoW. Arc subclass, we got Hunters here. Arc Strider has found a solid niche in mid-level PvE content, but struggles to execute its gameplay loop at our highest level of challenge. With a new super and aspect on the way, we're not making any large changes to the kit with this release, but we do plan to evaluate how it's feeling with the full package as we go. For now, we're focused on adding keyword utility to Arc Staff, increasing the uptime disorienting blow to make it stronger choice in comparison to combination blow. We're also increasing players' ability to survive when using Tempest Strike, which now grants a short duration of PvE damage resistance. Very interesting. I think that what Bungie's kind of doing here is making all the classes have the ability to both heal and acquire damage resistance, which I actually really like a lot. This adds a lot of depth to your builds. This adds a lot of depth to your gameplay. It adds a lot of like skill and knowledge to playing Destiny 2. When you have to just, throw healing nade at foot and then have, God mode, it's a little bit too easy, if you have to, melee an enemy, create an object, use the object to give yourself damage resistance, do this, do that, get your healing going, keep your uptime on your healing up, keep your uptime on your damage resistance up, while managing ad clear or mechanics or boss DPS or, killing champs. I really like that. I think that adds a little bit more balls to juggle while you're, running around doing these activities. So adding damage resistance to stuff like this is pretty cool, I think. Arc Staff, we got heavy palm strike attacks and heavy air slam behind enemies. And we got disorienting blow, decreased base cooldown time from 100 seconds to 90 seconds. And Tempest Strike, we got add additional damage resistance versus PvP combatants when activated, aiming for short duration after the attack. Interesting. I don't know if that's going to affect too much. I don't know what it says it's lingering for a short duration, so nothing too crazy there. And then we got Warlock. So we got Arc. Warlock is actually like probably the weaker of the three right now, I would say. Just because Nothing, yeah, Stormcaller or Chaos Reach, not too bad. Chain Lightning Surge in the same vein with more survivability when you aggressively teleport into groups of enemies. We've also increased the proximity detonation volume for Ball Lightning, fixing issue where projectile would pass above a target that it could damage but fail to detonate. Lightning Surge added additional damage resistance versus PV combatants when activated, linger for short duration after the attack. Ball Lightning increased the final arming shape size by 30%. Fixed an issue where the arming shape was offset upward higher than the maximum damage range of projectile's detonation. Chain Lightning has been a staple of Stormcaller's identity since its inception as an upgrade to the Thunderstrike melee in the original Destiny. With the introduction of Jolt in Season of Plunder and its propagation across the sandbox, however, it started to feel a little bit left behind. We're increasing the damage dealt by its chains by 100% to help increase its effectiveness against crowds of enemies and make it feel a lot worthier option in comparison to Warlock's many ranged melees. Chain Lightning increased secondary chains projectiles base damage from 27 to 54. Got it. Titans, like with the Tempest Strike for Hunters and Lightning Surge change for Warlocks, we're implementing the same extra damage resistance versus PV combatants during the Thunderclap windup. There we go. However, because Thunderclap doesn't allow Titans to move until their strike is fully finished, we've increased both the minimum and maximum damage output to help offset the trade-off in mobility versus PV combatants. We're also increasing the number of maximum damage output versus players to ensure that a fully charged Thunderclap can overcome player damage resistance or overshields. There we go. Thunderclap's getting a pretty hefty buff. I don't know if we'll end up using it still, but it's interesting. Increased minimum damage versus PV combatants 20%. 33 maximum damage by 33%. Increased damage by 14%. It'll have damage resistance that will linger after the attack is activated. It's been difficult for us to find a solid place for the knockout aspect across game modes, in part due to its harsh difference in the value of unstunning passive health regeneration in different combat environments. Knockout's passive health regeneration is very quick at max recovery, but can be interrupted. Generally, in PvP encounters, players are dramatically less likely to take chip damage after resolution of an engagement, resulting in much more health recovery than we think is comfortable. By contrast, with the increased number of enemies in PvE encounters, Knockout's passive healing can feel ineffectual because there are many more resources of incoming damage in a given moment. To help address this, we're reworking the way Knockout's healing works altogether. Rather than unstunning passive regeneration, defeating enemies with melee attacks now grants a chunk of health in a very short window, 0.1 second, and that chunk of health increases based on the type of target you defeat. We're also increasing the bonus damage granted to powered melee attacks versus PV combatants while Knockout is active. Interesting. So a change to Knockout, pretty substantial change. You'll get a chunk of health. Increased bonus damage granted versus powered melee attacks versus PV combatants from 25% to 50%. Reworked healing behavior, no longer unstuns health regeneration on melee defeats, now instantly grants a chunk of healing that scales up to the type of target defeated. Players 30 points, red bar 50 health points, major 75 health points, and champion plus is 100 health points. So those are the changes to Knockout. Overall, a very powerful aspect, one that if you are rocking Arc Titan, you're definitely using that. In update 6305 in January 2023, we implemented a change to drastically reduce the travel speed of Touch of Thunder's Storm Grenade upgrade to reduce its potency across the board, with a specific focus on Crucible. We're not in love with how that's shaken out in the PvE game modes, so we're making a targeted change to increase its speed, only when tracking PvE combatants. Here we go, Touch of Thunder. Storm Grenade, increased tracking travel speed when targeting PvE combatants by 0.5 and 1 meters per second, increasing the storm's lifetime. Got it. Oh, there's nothing about Jug Shield in here? Can you imagine? Massive Jug Shield buff. Keeping with Touch of Thunder, if Lightning Grenade upgrade is currently a bit too spicy, we're going to make a change here to curb the amount of immediate burst damage it can heal, especially outside the actual effective detonation range. Following this change, Lightning Grenade will apply its jolt immediately after the initial damage occurs, preventing the jolt from zapping its chain lightning instantly on creation. Now applies jolt if first. Got it. All right. Arc grenades in general are getting a whole thing. Storm Grenade is also getting a bit of a boost outside of Touch of Thunder variant. We're increasing the base version's damage versus PvE combatants by 20%. Skip Grenade getting a 15% buff. And then Arc Bolt Grenade is getting a 15% buff. Give it a shot on Prismatic Hunter and let us know how it's feeling. Uh-oh. Storm Grenade. Increased damage versus PV combatants by 20%. Touch of Thunder variance damage is unchanged. Super Grenade, good. All right. Arc Fragments. Wrapping up Arc, we're making some quality of life changes to our Arc Fragments suite. Spark of Recharge is one of the few resources of direct ability energy regeneration outside of Ionic Traces in the Arc subclass kit, and we feel it's currently too difficult to make use of. While it will still initially activate when becoming critically wounded, we're extending the duration of its benefits until the player returns to full health, rather than deactivating as soon as the player has any shields. Ability regeneration bonus now persists when the player returns to full shields. Got it. Spark of Beacons has always been a popular choice and spiked in usage with the release of Indebted Kindness. We don't mind the spike and are extending Spark of Beacons activation triggers to now include arc power weapons as well. Time to break out the Thunderlord. Spark of Beacons now also triggers on defeating targets with arc power ammo weapons while amplified. I don't remember what Spark of Beacons does. I haven't been using I haven't been using this when I rock Indebted Kindness, but apparently I need to, and apparently we'll need to use it with Thunderlord soon here. And here we go. Perfect. We got its frequency. Good. We got just a hint of old frontal assault talent. Spark of Frequency now applies 15 weapon stability on powered melee hit, in addition to its reload benefit. Nice. All right, here we go. We got Solar subclasses. For Solar, in addition to Well of Radiance changes above, we're making some targeted improvements that are included with Prismatic, as well as some improvements to standalone abilities that needed some love. All right, Solar Hunters, you're on the chopping block here. See what they're gonna do to you. Gotta buckle up here. For our Gunslinger friends, we're taking a look at Lightweight Knife, which has struggled to find an identity for itself. Our overall goal for this ability is to provide a low barrier entry melee with a payoff for high skill usage. However, it's not currently hitting our fantasy bar with the release of the final shape. This melee is getting a small rework. It now has 2 melee charges by default and can be thrown back to back dramatically faster. Interesting. Lightweight Knife now has 2 charges, increased throw animation speed by 33%. This has actually been necessary. I don't know if anyone uses Lightweight Knife. I feel like everyone uses the fan blades, the 3, and then they use the weighted knife. Reduce suppression time between throws so that way knives can be thrown very quickly back to back. Nice. You just pop off 2 of those bad boys. The additional melee charge does not stack with Ophidius Spath due to the exotic's unique energy recharge behavior. We'll be monitoring this and evaluating how things are playing once this goes live. Very interesting. So you won't be able to use this with Ophidius Spath. Be mindful of that. If you see someone using Lightweight and Ophidia, tell them, let them know. To support this, we're also updating Knock 'em Down's internal cooldown on its melee refund. This was initially intended to prevent situations where Knife Strike could refund many charges at once, but with the Lightweight Knife update, we felt it was important to enable a faster cadence of potential refunds. Knock 'em Down. Reduce internal cooldown on throwing knife refund by 1 second, from 1 second to 0.2 seconds. Some raid teams have a niche strategy of fully stacking Golden Gun Hunters. Who does that? Not me. I definitely have not made videos about that and have not talked about this on various occasions. Marksman to instantly refund each other supers with the orbs of power created on precision hit in combination with the additional super energy granted on orb pickup by Star Eater scales. While we always appreciate this kind of build crafting ingenuity, this level of super chaining isn't very healthy for the game. You know what, Bungie? You're gonna take away our golden guns, huh? Therefore, we're reducing the strength of orbs created by the golden gun. Marksman's precision hits perk and making some targets adjustments to the specific combination noted above. Golden Gun Marksman. Reduce strength of orbs of power created on precision hit as follows. When hitting non-boss enemies, reduce the strength from 0.75 to 0.5 times of a normal super orb of power. When hitting boss enemies, reduce strength from 0.75 to 0.4. When hitting boss enemies while Star Eater scale is equipped, reduce strength from 0.75 to 0.35. Rough. Damn. They did it to us. They nerfed the golden guns. All right, Titans, you're up. We got Sunbreakers. We're taking a look at Consecration. The Consecration needs a big buff, all right? We need a big buff here. We made some improvements to Consecration at update 7.3.5 that landed pretty well, but with its inclusion in Prismatic, we wanted to make sure Consecration could stand on its own without relying on Roaring Flames. We also wanted to have some interesting interactions with other Prismatic Titan abilities. As a result, we have increased the damage of ignitions caused by Consecration versus PV combatants and further increase its consistency against floating targets. You'll still need a different tool to take down a pesky Grim, but a Servitor or Shank could cause less frustration. Got it. Consecration Slam Attack can now shatter Stasis crystals. Ignitions generated by Consecration now deal 20% additional damage to PvE combatants. We got Fixed Issue where Consecration Slam Attack was sometimes unable to damage floating combatants while they're grounded. And Fixed Issue where Consecration's intended PvE damage resistance was not being applied. There we go. Another Sunbreaker ability feature, Prismatic Titan, is Hammer of Soul, which we feel is too reliant on the additional damage granted from the sunspots created by Soul Invictus. We're making a change to Hammer of Soul that only affects the super when Soul Invictus isn't equipped. This will increase the number of shrapnel submunitions created on impact based on the primary projectile's lifetime and the damage of those submunitions deal. We got Hammer of Soul, increase projectile submunition count when Soul Invictus is not equipped as follows. If the projectile detonates within the first 0.7 seconds of its lifetime, it now creates 4 shrapnel submunitions, up from 3. If the projectile detonates after 0.7 seconds of its lifetime, it now creates 6 shrapnel, up from 5. And when Soul of Invictus equipped, only 3 shrapnel submunitions created regardless of flight time. Shrapnel munitions now deal increased damage when Soul of Invictus is not equipped, and with the damage increasing after the 0.7 seconds of the projectile's lifetime. Got it. And Swarm Grenade, here we go. Finally, a few weeks ago, we revealed abilities coming with each prismatic subclass, and some hunters raised an eyebrow at the inclusion of Swarm Grenade. We agree we have boosted Swarm Grenade's ease of use and PvE output to make sure it shines in that kit. Swarm Grenade got increased tracking shape size to 4 meters to 6 meters, increased linger duration from 7 to 8 seconds to 10 to 11 seconds, and increased damage by 20% against PvE combatants. So a little buff to Swarm Grenade there. And that's everything in regards to Solar. Now we got to see what's going on with Void. We got Void Hunters, we got Void Titans, we got Void Warlocks. Void Warlocks are definitely in need of some love. And then we got Strand coming up. So stay tuned, we're almost there. Strand Titan is going to get absolutely murdered, right? I mean, if they're going to murder our Golden Gun Hunters, then Strand Titan stands no chance here. Hunters, Night Stalkers are generally in a pretty strong place, as seen by their high popularity in Onslaught. A large portion of that is driven by the potency of Shadow Shot and its ability to lock down hordes of incoming enemies, and not necessarily its neutral game offering, so we're making a few changes to help shore up that side. With the release of Void 3.0, we removed the Corrosive Smoke melee ability in favor of Snare Bomb, leaning further into the trap-laying trickster fantasy. We want to walk that back a little bit and are baking in small, escalating damage over time to the Snare Bomb's now longer smoke volume. This will help Night Stalkers capitalize on an incapacitated enemy caught in their trap. These changes also apply to the smoke volume created by Trapper's ambush. We got Snare Bomb, increased linger duration of smoke after detonation from 3 to 5 seconds. Now applies small damage over time to enemies in the smoke, which increases in strength the longer they remain in the smoke. And then Trapper's Ambush, increased linger duration of the smoke after detonation from 4 to 6 seconds. Now applies Snare Bomb's damage over time to enemies caught in the smoke. Fix an issue where Trapper's Ambush smoke effects could be obstructed by ground geometry. Got it, so some small changes there. We also got updating Status Executioner to allow its weaken effect to be applied to glaive melees as well. Interesting, what? Status Executioner's weaken effect can now be applied by glaive melee attacks. That's huge. That's huge, okay. Might be using that to debuff targets, apparently. Titans. For Sentinels, we've focused on large... Can you imagine that with the heavy Stasis glaive? That might actually not be too bad. For Sentinels, we focused on a large consistency pass for the shield throw melee attack. While we want to feel this weighty, impactful for our previous passes, we haven't done enough to make it deal with groups of minor combatants. We're taking a much stronger swing here, resulting in a much larger improvement to its consistency. We're also increasing its PvE damage to help ensure the combatants who are hit have a meaningful dent left in them. Shield throw, maximum bounce count from 4 to 5, lifetime from 3 seconds to 4 seconds, increased its tracking shape size and strength after each bounce. You know what I want my shield throw to be like? I want it to be like one of those lucent hives that we fight in the light blade. I want mine to go like bounce off 7 different walls and then kill everything. Slightly increased gravity and decreased thrust. Speed each bounce. Increased damage versus PV targets by 20%. Nice. That's pretty good. We're also making a small change to offensive bulwark. This is partially a preventative fix to stop players from getting into a bad timer state, similar to the Ember of Empyrean issue. We're making a quality of life change to offset it. Offensive bulwark can now only extend Void Overshield's timer to its normal maximum duration to prevent an issue where players could get into a bad timer state. Now regenerates a small portion of your active Void Overshield with each melee defeat. Interesting. Warlock, we got finally our Voidwalkers are getting a number of improvements, starting with Chaos Accelerant. Its overcharged magnetic grade has fallen by the wayside since its inception as handheld supernova with Forsaken. To help remedy this, we're increasing its damage output and knockback capability as well as uptime. All right, so you got your charged up magnetic grenade, increased maximum intensity of physics knockback impulse by 10%. So you're about to get yeeted by this charged up grenade. Increased damage versus combatants by 20%. Now passively decreases your magnetic grade's cooldown by 10% while Chaos Accelerant is equipped. There you go. And then from the first minute of your experience with Prismatic, Pocket Singularity will be available to equip and use. A piece of feedback we've heard for now is that Pocket Singularity struggles in high-level PvE content, and we agree. That is true. I want its overall primary fantasy to remain displacement and knockback. We're giving it a sizable damage increase versus PvE combatants by 50%. That's more like it. All right, that thing does currently like nothing to enemies, so 50% is more than fair. Finally, we're taking a look at Nova Bomb to improve its overall damage output. Let's go without the need of an exotic. That's what I like to hear. Cataclysm Nova Bomb, we're increasing its maximum secondary secret count and making it more consistent. And for Vortex Nova Bomb, we're increasing the lifetime of the lingering damage over time volume. Nice. Cataclysmic Variant, increased secret count from 4 to 6. Fix an issue where the seekers could impact the environment on creation. And Vortex, its linger duration goes from 7 to 10 seconds. And fix an issue where the linger visual effects were shutting off early. All right, cool. Very nice. Some good changes to Void Warlocks out there and the rest of them. Now it's on to Strand. We got the last one here. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you watching this. You're a true legend. All right. Last up is Strand, which has remained a popular pick with its introduction since Lightfall. Our focus for Strand Balance Pass is primarily to bring its outliers at both the top and very bottom ends of the spectrum, rather than larger reworks we've seen with other damage types. As we evaluate how these changes are feeling and how Strand abilities include with Prismatic are playing, we'll be taking another look in the future. Thread of Warding. Before we get into individual subclasses, let's first look at the outlier we'd like to address, which is Thread of Warding Fragment. They're like, let's first talk about the elephant in the room. While we appreciate the defensive value it provides by granting Woven Mail, it's currently too potent. It overshadows the role of Berserkers, the Into the Fray aspect of being the best source of Woven Mail for your team. Thread of Warding, reduce Woven Mail duration on orb, power pickup from 10 seconds to 5 seconds? No! No! That's rough. Hunter, that shouldn't, I mean, that should hurt, but also I guess maybe if you make more orbs, it'll be okay. Like maybe if you're making like a plentiful amount of orbs, that's gonna hurt big time though. Hunter, Threadrunner's Ensnaring Slam has remained popular throughout Strand's life and has seen a small bump in PvE popularity following the increased uptime in post-update 7.3.5. However, it is currently too powerful against other players with a detonation radius that is very difficult for victims to understand, so reducing its overall area of effect versus players. This is true. If you've ever played some Crucible and randomly you just see a fucking Hunter do a crazy fucking Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 backflip out of nowhere and suspend you and you're like, where am I? What the fuck? Detonation volume versus players is now a cylinder with a 6.5 meter radius rather than a sphere with an 8 meter radius. This results in fewer instances of victims correctly attempting to counterplay by jumping, but being caught by the Ensnaring Slam detonation high up in the air. Nice. Similarly, Threaded Spike is a little too potent against enemy players with very forgiving tracking and high damage for its ease of use, so we're making a small reduction to its damage versus enemy players. We're also changing the catch mechanic so that catching your Threaded Spike manually no longer breaks invisibility. We want to prevent this from happening on Prismatic Hunter in combination with Stylus Executioner. Threaded Spike, reduce damage versus enemy players from 79 to 70. Catching your Threaded Spike no longer breaks invisibility. Okay. And then Warlock. For Brood Weavers, our focus, they're actually in a pretty good spot, but they're going on Weaver's Call here. One major piece of feedback is that thread in the uptime for Brood Weavers doesn't match up to the fantasy, with Rift cooldown times being relatively long to match the combatant utility of the heal damage increase. Weaver's Call could feel too spiky in its output with a lot of downtime. We agree that the feedback and are updating that Weaver's Call to allow it to generate perch threadlings through normal gameplay, namely by defeating targets with any source of strand damage. Whoa. Weaver's Call had new behavior. Defeating a target with strand damage now has a chance to generate a perch threadling with a higher chance to generate from defeating more powerful targets. All right, this is going to get out of control really fast here. All right, people are going to be running around with freaking one of those strand heavy GLs, those waveframe ones, just making perch threadlings everywhere. They're going to have 10,000 threadlings. It's going to be really sick in PvE. This is going to be, this might be one of the new builds I make as soon as I get into the final shape, because it'll be a lot of fun actually. This damage can be from any source, including other threadlings. Okay, so threadlings are making more threadlings now. Bungie's gotten a little too crazy here with this one. This is going to be insane. You're just going to have like, infinite threadlings all over the place, making more threadlings. Grapple tangles and melee. Before we get into Berserker, let's take a pit stop and talk about grapple tangles and grapple melee. Oh god. They said before we get into annihilating Berserker, before we just absolutely bend Berserker over and spank him on the butt and say stop ruining everything, stop soloing all the freaking raids and dungeons and GMs easily, stop one-phasing bosses, stop it. When we initially built the grapple tangle as part of the Widow's Silk aspect, we intended for it to be used primarily as a traversal tool, allowing hunters to give their fire team a fast grapple path through combat spaces. Oh really? Is that what you intended, Bungie? Well, it didn't work out that way, did it? However, that intention was quickly subverted, and we now see grapple tangles primarily used to fuel an infinite number of high output grapple melees, particularly on Berserker with 1-2 punch shotguns, right? And Navigator making a grapple point. We want to keep some degree of freedom in how grapple tangles are used, but we don't believe that using a single attack back to back like this is particularly interesting or healthy gameplay. Hey, let's not attack it being interesting, okay? It's kind of fun seeing people swing around like Tarzan. All right, the interesting is too far. That's personal attack. It's obviously not very healthy for the game though. So we're taking a few steps to address it. First, grapple tangles no longer fully refresh their duration when a player uses them. Oh, she. Instead, they have a flat number of seconds added to their timer, and that added time decreases with each successive grapple to the same grapple tangle. Wow, okay, so you're not gonna, this RIP to the solo Strand Titan builds. That alone is gonna make it really, really tough. Grapple tangles no longer fully refresh their duration from grapple to. So right now you can grapple to it, right? You hit a shotgun shot and you hit it with 1-2 punch. You grapple and then you hit melee. Grapple melee, right? You keep doing that shotgun shot, 1-2 punch, grapple melee. Well, now when you keep hitting that grapple, you have a cooldown, and the more you keep grappling to that spot, the bigger that cooldown is going to get. Now increase their duration by a maximum 5 seconds per grapple, reducing to a maximum number of 1 second added after 5 consecutive grapples to the same grapple tangle. Oh, I guess it's reducing to a maximum of 1 second added after 5 consecutive grapples. Okay, I mean, if it's just 1 second, it's not like the worst ever. Additionally, grapple melee will no longer be able to be used after firing your weapon. Huh? This is primarily intended to reduce the number of difficult to understand grapple melee deaths in Crucible, where players can grapple towards you, fire a single hand cannon shot, and then follow up with a grapple melee for a very fast cleanup, but also reduces the number of melee damage stack sources, which can spiral out of control very quickly, that are easily achievable with grapple melees by removing the 1-2 punch from the equation. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. You shoot the 1-2 punch shotgun, and then you grapple. Wow, they did it. They did it. They decided to do it on 2 fronts to make sure they got the job done, you know? Titan, looking back to Berserker, while we're happy with the fantasy has landed, there are a few balance outliers we want to address to make sure that it's not dramatically out of band with our other subclasses. Our changes here are relatively small and targeted at specific issues, and our goal is that the overall fantasy and gameplay style of the subclass remains intact throughout. Into the Fray offers a high degree of survivability and melee ability uptime. We're generally okay with the survivability, and it's critical to the fantasy of the subclass, but in combination with the accelerating passive regeneration of Frenzied Blade as charges accumulate, the melee ability regeneration it provides is slightly too high, so we're bringing it down a bit Into the Fray, reduce melee ability regeneration scalar from 4 times to 3 times in PvP activities, unchanged in PvP. When released update 7.3.0 last December, Banner of War was still new and we didn't have much time to holistically evaluate its potency. Now we've had more time to sit with it. We've had a few targeted changes to make. Having a relatively easy upkeep bonus fits well with the Berserker playstyle, but its lengthy duration results in too little pressure to fit the high action per minute gameplay loop, so we're reducing its maximum timer length by 20%. Oof. Banner of War nerf as well, on top of Into the Fray nerf, on top of grapple melee nerf. Rough day out there for the Strand Titans. Above, we mentioned that melee stacking can quickly spiral out of control, and Banner of War is a good example of this result. When paired with something like the newly reworked Worm God Caress or the evergreen staple Synthesubs, Banner of War's relatively modest melee damage becomes a very large force multiplier for the melee damage boost granted with those exotics. That isn't healthy long term. We still want Banner to provide some value to the player when using these exotics, as they're a natural pairing, but we are implementing diminishing returns on whether they're active. Whoa. On when either are active. Okay, so we got Banner of War, reduced maximum timer from 30 seconds to 24. Melee, glaive melee, super bonus damage now. Diminishing returns with Syntheseps. Got it. So Syntheseps goes from 1.4 to 1.15. Glaive goes from 1.25 to 1.125. Super bonus goes from 1.4 to 1.2. Melee and glaive damage bonuses now have diminishing returns on Worm God Caress, reduced from 1.4 to 1.1. And for melees and glaives from 1.4 to 1.05. Wow. Finally, for Frenzy Blade, we've identified an issue where the melee lunge target point was being offset too far forward and the actual lunge target, resulting in some odd behavior when using it at close ranges. So we reduced the forward offset for melee lunge from 0.4 to 0.18 meters. So they make it, the melee actually register a little bit better. That's good. Conclusion, that's everything for now. Holy. Until the final shape, wow. What an article. Now that was a journey. That was 51 minutes of my life. And I appreciate all of you that stayed through to the end of it. That was pretty wild. Some pretty good changes though overall. I think that nerfing Strand Titan was fair. Like it needed to be nerfed. I know I'm joking a little bit about it being harsh, but it did need to be nerfed. It was doing way crazy stuff. Well, did need to be nerfed. Things need to, we can't just be sitting in a well. We have to have some, movement and actually do the encounter properly. Golden Gun needed to be nerfed. These are all fair things that we've recently seen in Pantheon exploit or bypass mechanics encounters. So as much as I'm never a fan of things getting nerfed. Why would I want stuff to get nerfed, right? Like I like to have fun. I like to beat the activities. I'm not trying to make it harder for myself or for you, but I think that there's a time and a place when the outliers get brought down a little bit. And that definitely seemed like the right thing to do. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And I'm very much looking forward to these Stasis builds now, especially after the nerfs to Strand. Looks like Bungie is going to push us pretty heavily towards the Stasis section. I feel like Stasis builds are about to be stonks and huge in the final shape. That's my last analysis from reading this entire thing. Let me know what you think though. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.